Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francescagraham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started. Welcome back, Star Chamber listeners, to another great episode of the Star Chamber.
All right.
We are joined today by Lieutenant Colonel Natalie Rowell, who is a 31-year veteran of the United States Air Force and California Air National Guard, where she served as the Force Support Flight Commander for the 195th Wing at Beale Air Force Base before her separation. Throughout her distinguished career, she has built a legacy of leadership, advocacy, and resilience, commanding multidisciplinary teams, managing complex human resource and readiness programs, and mentoring hundreds of airmen across California and the Air Force enterprise. Lieutenant Colonel Rowell holds a Master of Business Administration and Human Resources and a Master's Certificate in Government Contracting from George Washington University. She was a credentialed sexual assault response coordinator and a graduate of the Inspector General Complaints Resolution course, roles that have shaped her unwavering commitment to truth, transparency, and justice. And I'm looking forward to how that IG course loops into your overall story, Natalie, because I know it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Known for her fierce advocacy and integrity, Natalie has become a powerful voice for the voiceless, fighting for the underdog and challenging systems to uphold fairness and accountability. Her leadership has been recognized nationally for advancing personnel management, resilience, and ethical reform across the Air National Guard. Beyond her service, she is a devoted wife, mother, and proud grandmother who finds strength and purpose in faith, family, and community. Lieutenant Colonel Rowell's journey reflects courage, compassion, and a steadfast belief that standing up for others, no matter the cost, is the truest form of leadership. And we second that.
Love it.
3,000 times over. And before we get fully started, let's just for all of our, we'll say what they are here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The opinions and views expressed by guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not represent the official policies, positions, or endorsements of the United States Air Force or any other government entity. This discussion is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as reflecting the official stance of any military or government organization. And what do we say, Ryan?
To all active duty and guard Poindexters, suck it.
Suck it. And reservists. And reservists.
And reserve. Total force. It's a total force blanket statement.
Total force. And retired. Retired.
Yeah.
You never know. You might get
You're under the UCMJ. Hot topic.
Hot topic. Hot takes. Hot takes. Senator Kelly, I hope you're listening. Secretary Hegseth. Okay. Natalie, before this gets too far off the rails, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, it's definitely been a journey. I would do it all over again, regardless of the separation at the end there and the way things have gone, probably for about the last 15 years. I'd still do it all over again. I started out enlisted, so I had that experience and then became a commissioned officer after 9/11. And so I've just been able to use all those experiences just to make me, I believe, a better officer and a better leader. I really wouldn't change a whole lot as far as my career goes. I do have learned a ton though, and one of the things that you brought up in the original bio was that the IG course. And so what I learned along the way is that I took these courses just because my leadership was like, hey, I think you need to go to the IG course because we're going to be a wing and I want you to be an IG, maybe eventually. And I never used it. I never actually became an official IG, but oh boy, did I use that information, not knowing I would need to use it a lot for myself and others, but just really the course itself, what I was told when I was there, things that I never thought I would use in the future, but I absolutely did.
Oh, Natalie, you and me both.
Oh my goodness. I just never thought, and
Who would
I've
have
listened to
thought?
all the podcasts, right, for the Star Chamber, and that's one of the things is that I just have my mouth gaping open often because I'm like, oh my God, I'm hearing my story again. I'm hearing my story again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
The
so
playbook does not change
The
much, does
pattern
it,
remains
Brian?
the same. I'll tell you though, I like how you open, Natalie, which is first and foremost, above all else, you would not trade your experiences, the opportunities you were given, all of that for anything. And Francesca, I'm going to speak on her behalf as well as my own. We would not trade it for the world. And that sometimes gets misconstrued. The work we do, like we're just naysayers or cancel culturists. No, we had phenomenal careers. We were incredibly fortunate. But there are some things that are fundamentally broken that threaten the future state of the military, and we're crusading against that. So I love your opening. So thank you for that. So let's get into it. How did your career and Walk the Talk Foundation collide? What brought you to us?
oh my goodness, I am so grateful. First of all, I'm just so grateful because I had an '06 come to me and they knew what was going on. Well, actually, they were stunned. I mean, literally to the point of a real colonel, came to me and said, where'd you disappear to? Where'd you go? And I'm like, what do you mean, where'd I go? This is going on. This is happening. And literally, that individual was just like, this is so wrong. I mean, they were almost brought to, an emotional state of like, how could this be happening to you? How could these things actually, are these things actually really going on? And I was like, yes. And then I told the individual, the colonel, what was going on. And they said, hey, I think I have somebody that really an upstanding person. And I think they work for a foundation that could really is like right along the lines of what you're going through and what you're fighting against. And I really had high respect for this individual. And then they introduced me to Francesca. And then that's when I had the interview with the both of you. And I was just so relieved because what you spoke in that initial interview was exactly what I was hoping was out there. I felt like I was the only underdog fighter that was
Yeah.
going to go out, there for them. And you guys were already, and just even the name of your organization, I say that all the time, people don't leave organizations, they leave people. And when you have such poor leadership and then you have people, that are just out for themselves, I just, and I didn't know this individual for very long. So this colonel knew of my character within about a year. And by that time was like, where did you go? Where did you disappear? How did all this happen? And then, like I said, then I was blessed being brought to the foundation and it all
Awesome.
started from there.
Awesome. And that was totally unscripted, this buildup of suspense, because now all the listeners are like, what happened? Oh man, and they're getting their popcorn ready. So well done. You're a professional podcaster. I like it.
No,
All
no.
right. So what's the thing? What happened to you to have this colonel go, hey, you need help. We know some people that can help. Walk the Talk Foundation. You need to go to them. What was the catalyst for that?
So I had unfortunately, I think it was in October of about 2025, October 2025, I was in excruciating pain. I was an active member, so active guard reserve. It's called an AGR in the National Guard. So you're basically active duty. And so all the active duty things apply to you. And so that includes medical, right? So I was on orders and in let me back up a little bit. So in July, I was getting ready for my PT test and I couldn't take it because evidently I had a torn ligament in my ankle. And so that had been ongoing for a long time. So I was really trying to get ready for my PT test. And then there was just no way that was happening. It was like, it would be like running on a broken ankle. And so I didn't do that. And then I went to the doctors, the active duty clinic where you're required to go. And that's where I went. And then they did an MRI, diagnosed me with that. And then in the interim, while waiting to determine if I was going to get surgery or what was going to happen, October 3rd, I was diagnosed with, I was in excruciating pain. My leg was really swollen. And I went in earlier in September because my leg was swelling really bad and they couldn't find nothing. They did x-rays and all the medical stuff and nothing. And then I finally went into the ER like a week later, and the ER doctor was like, sure, I had blood clots in my leg, but they couldn't find them. And so that's really strange. I have a medical background. So I'm like, a degree in sports medicine. So I'm like, I know all this terminology and all this stuff. And I'm like, something's really wrong. And I really think I have what's called deep vein thrombosis, which are blood clots, but nothing. So I left the ER that day with nothing. So then finally, my active duty provider said, I really need to get you down to Travis Air Force Base. I really need to get you down there because I'm really, really concerned. You are not a whiner complainer. And I wasn't. I mean, I didn't. I was trying to run on a broken ankle. So I went and got an ultrasound done, and it was while I was sitting in the room with when the providers came in, and the provider actually had said, I wasn't critical, so he was going to wait a couple weeks to see me. And so when I got in there and the ultrasound was done, another full board colonel walked in. It was the doctor, and he said he was just literally like pasty gray. And he couldn't believe that I was even alive sitting in the chair. And wow. So we walked in and he said, have you been to Europe on a plane lately? Have you done, all these things? And I said, no, do you have, like fluttering of your heart, like AFib? And I was like, no. And none of these things. And I'm like, well, the other guy already asked me those questions, and this person asked me those questions. And so I knew where it was going because I have a medical background. And I was like, okay, I have blood clots. But I'm like, okay, doc, well, why don't you just tell me what my diagnosis is? And he's like, you're just filled with blood clots. And okay. I have so many blood clots. I don't even, I had over 12 blood clots in my leg. And wow. So I knew that could be a death sentence. And so I just was like, okay, well, I'm happy that's not what happened. I didn't throw one, doc. So what do we do? What do we do now? And he said, well, you're not leaving this base without blood thinners. And at one point he thought maybe I would even have to be admitted into the hospital. And I prefer not to do that. But, of course I want to live. So I said, whatever we need to do, doc, we'll do. And he said, well, you're just not leaving this base without being on blood thinners. And then, like I said, he just didn't even know what to do with himself. I think he was kind of in shock, as I was, but I had a really good attitude. I was like, okay, well, I beat that one. Let's just take care of this and move on.
Beat those 12 clots. Take that.
Yes, yeah. And then I immediately got put on the medication and went back home. And then my supervisor called me the next day, and the supervisor's a full bird colonel, the deputy commander, and I thought they were calling me to, check in on me because I had told them, I'd had these, medical issues going on, keeping in the room.
Oh, we know where this is going.
Yeah. Like the suspense is killing me.
Don't go
I know
there.
Oh,
Natalie,
I know
it.
I know it. I'm like,
well, are you ready? But
the suspense is killing me.
She goes, the colonel said, oh, well, I was just calling you to let you know that your appeal for the Selective Retention Review Board was denied. So
solid.
I said, oh, well, not surprised. But you know what, Colonel, I have bigger fish to fry right now.
Can we intervene for people who are not savvy with that term or process?
Sure.
What is that? What were you trying to accomplish there?
So the Selective Retention Review Board is a board that happens. It doesn't have to happen. So just know that the Adjutant General for the state gets to decide whether you have a Selective Retention Review Board. And that is every person enlisted an officer over 20 years of service gets reviewed by this panel and determined whether or not they think your career's done and or, if you check all the boxes, go to all your professional military education, all those kinds of things. There's a bunch of criteria, but literally the criteria in the regulation doesn't address any of that. It just says, are you in a position that we still need your services, your expertise, all those kinds of things. And I met all the criteria to be kept. There was no one behind me that I was stopping for promotion and all these kinds of things. And mind you, I'm a personnel officer of 20 years. So I know what's supposed to happen. I know how things are supposed to go. I actually, have not sat on the official board, but, helped put together the boards, put together all the criteria, all those kinds of things. So I know how they're supposed to run. And in 2020, I filed a congressional complaint because the state of California was not conducting them properly. They were using them for punitive actions, and I wasn't even fighting for myself in 2020. It was for everybody else that was how the boards were being conducted improperly.
A guard entity using administrative processes as punishments? What? Natalie, you jest.
What? Again, yes.
What? This story is all full of twists and turns.
I think we just got to the protected communication. So that was am I correct in saying that, Natalie? That was the protected communication that you made in 2020 that started off what ended up what we're seeing as reprisal against you for making that protected communication about guard using these processes as punishment. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I did it in 2020, and then I did it again in 2024. So
Okay, nice.
I actually went and spoke to the adjutant general and told them that these were not being done correctly again. And
this is when you were in command, correct?
Correct. I was in command.
You're at 05 level command.
05 level command, and I used the open door policy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yep.
Absolutely. And so then I do believe that was absolutely, that was it for me. That I can honestly say that I don't have, because I know how the game is played, because I know how they use these systems and these administrative processes to get rid of people they don't like and yet keep people they do like, then I knew what they were going to do. I mean, I knew every step. And so I would actually verbalize, what I thought was going to be necessary so I could go document it. And that they could run back and tell whoever they wanted to, which they always do. And they did. And then, but leadership forgets that if the airmen talk, right? So I don't care what level you are, but airmen talk. And so if they have respect for you, they will find a way to get you the information so that you have it and you know it, that other people have my back. So it wasn't just me fighting for the underdogs, but there was people that would come out of the woodwork to contact me and tell me things, that were going on and that were happening. And oftentimes I found out a lot of stuff I never wanted to know, because as a commander, then I have to address it. So I would. And of course that made me, I got called names like Pollyanna and Jiminy Cricket, and I take those all as Mary Poppins, is all good things.
Natalie, I'm sorry, but Francesca's mom doesn't allow swearing on the show, so if you could watch your language there. Okay, so really in the series of events, it starts back 5 years ago. You identify yourself as a boat rocker, right? I'm air quoting now because it's not a video podcast. The Guard is, all systems of redress in the military are fundamentally corrupted and broken. We've established that. But the Guard is especially acute because it is their own insular bubble. I think there are 54 separate entities within the Guard or state militia, Puerto Rico, et cetera. And they're all very insulated, right? It goes up to the tag, that's the adjutant general and the governor, and that's where it ends. And there's very little to zero ability to intervene, interject, seek redress outside of that sphere. So basically, especially in the Guard, once you have been identified as a bad apple, you're pretty much gonna be done, right? There is very little you can do, save for move to another state, transfer to another militia, etc. So 5 years, and then a year ago, you're doing the same thing. You're like, hey, they're using these personnel, the selective retention to pick and choose who they want. No meritocracy here. It's just a fraternity, as is the case in many guard units, right? That's just a fact of life. That's not being flippant. So you've identified this, you bring it up, it doesn't change, and then you have a bunch of blood clots, and when you come home from learning that you didn't or aren't going to die, you're told, look, you're gone. And that was really because of a concerted effort, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, we're going to hear the rest of the narrative, but basically concerted effort to get you out because you had been banging the drum about this SRRB. Correct?
You got it. You got it. And that's, yes, absolutely. Not to mention the fact that they also picked me to be an investigating officer.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next.
Let's talk about that, because that's a good one.
Yeah, because I think if I remember your story arc when we did our initial consult is you made this SRRB, SRB, Selective Service Retention Board, Protected Communications. You made 2 of them. You were in an 05 level command, and while you were in that 05 level command, they selected you to do an investigation. I believe it dealt with military sexual trauma of some sort, and within the California National Guard. And at least as I recall, I know I'm kind of putting words in your mouth on this one, but as I recall, at least, it seemed as if you were telling me that they selected you for this investigation almost as a tool to highlight something that you're doing wrong, and then use that as their excuse for separating you from the guard. So that's just kind of the opener. So
bingo, ding, 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 cover all.
You got as a matter of context, and I think this is important, sorry to break the flow here. This is the California National Guard, and we'll put a link in the show notes to the LA Times novelette, basically, that they have published over the past decade about all the misgivings, malfeasance, misfeasance within that state's militia. Okay, sorry, continue, please.
No, absolutely. So yes, so I was selected, and I mean that I again, I know it seems like I'm speechless because I kind of am when I go back to that. Yes, so I was selected. I do feel that it was a concerted effort to use that to get me to do something wrong or set me up for failure, which that doesn't work well with me. Maybe it's because I'm such a prayerful person, I don't know, but I do believe that even in my sometimes naivety, believing that people are going to do the right things. And oftentimes they do. When you get the right investigator, they will tell you, they will kind of feel you out and see if you're trustworthy and can be. And this was a horrible, horrible investigation. And I kept going back to the leadership that assigned me and saying, this should not be a CDI. This involves multiple.
Okay, if I can stop you there, what was their task to you? What were you told to investigate, and in what capacity?
Well, they gave me these really broad allegations, and then they gave me a guide. It's called a CDI guide.
Okay, so this was a command-directed investigation.
Correct.
Maybe referred from the Inspector General system, what have you, but it was sent back to the chain of command where and we've covered this in other shows, was worth repeating. They pick anybody. This happened to be you with training, but it could have been anybody with a heartbeat.
But they didn't know I had training.
They didn't know, and now you are investigating broad allegations surrounding what?
Surrounding, everywhere from like sexual assault to, the spectrum was so broad that.
So crimes were included in this command director investigation. So
yes, but they
tried to do an administrative investigation for crimes.
Yes. And that's exactly how I saw it, but not knowing that when I originally read the allegations, I had no idea, right? And then once I started interviewing and etc., I was just, I kept saying hard stop, because of course they give you a JAG, which is a judge advocate general, basically like you're an attorney to work with that's under the commander. And again, I think you guys have talked about this dozens of times, the same chain of command, right? The foxes in the hen house. And so I'm supposed to be the neutral party trying to gather all the facts. So that's exactly what I tried to do. Here's me, I'm going in there and I'm going to do my job and do the mission. And so I really went in there with that whole idea that I was going to get to the bottom, get to the truth. And as I started, I read the CDI guide, which was I was given the CDI guide by the JAG. And the reason I keep repeating that is because I didn't find out until 3/4 of the way through the investigation that CDI guide that I was given for my guidance to conduct the investigation was actually obsolete in 2021.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
So then it's like a soap opera. It gets twisty and turny. They didn't know. Often people that meet me think that they mistake kindness for weakness. And just because I treat you with dignity and respect, just because I'm kind to you, just because I do things for you that I would do for anybody else across the board, regardless of, any, factors, race, gender, whatever your decisions are, I treat everybody the same. And so oftentimes people think that I'm so naive or so too nice that I'm not going to hold the hard line, but I have no problems doing that.
So what was happening during the investigation? I remember when we were talking during that initial consult that you were identifying, if I recall, misconduct at the senior levels within the National Guard. So basically, California National Guard. So basically, that the misconduct extended past the initial scope of the investigation. And so you were going back to the judge advocate and saying, hey, I'm continuing to have these issues. I'm continuing to have these issues. It keeps expanding. And the JAG, and if I recall, whoever the commander was, your more senior commander was, stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. And then you pushed back on and said, no, I will not stop what I'm doing. And then during that time frame then is when these medical issues came up. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then magically all of a sudden you find out you're not being retained as you're identifying misconduct within the California National Guard. Is that fair?
Yes, it is. It's totally fair. In fact, my wing commander tried to say they were going to help me with the report and I needed to speed up the investigation because there was all these people all the way up to the top. I mean, I have emails of generals wanting to know about this investigation. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Even the guide doesn't say that. It says I'm not supposed to share this information with anyone but the commander and the JAG. And so I didn't. And I think that they tried to get me to do that, several times. And so even the vice commander got involved and said that, well, people are getting pressure. You need to hurry up and, finish this investigation. And I said, first of all, this was behind closed doors. And I said, this is none of your business. And you were the former, I think, chief of staff. And now you came back as the vice commander to this same wing and all the parties involved and about this investigation. Well, I'm not telling you anything. And if you ask me again, then I will file a complaint against you.
And while you're doing this, are you also having conversations with some investigative entity or person in the chain of command to the effect that you don't feel it's appropriate to be investigating a crime
repeatedly? I repeatedly told the wing commander in emails that this is beyond the scope of the investigation. And because I knew I couldn't trust any of them, I went to a JAG and said, I'm not telling you anything, but this is a scenario. What should I do? I can't tell you anything, and I'm not going to tell you anything to implicate you. And they said, oh my God, you need to get a new JAG. You need to get, this needs to be up channeled. So I got a hold of every JAG that I could find, and they all told me the same thing. And then by grace of God, I got a letter finding out that the actual person, that the complainant, actually got a letter from the Inspector General. So I never knew this whole time that this was a command-directed investigation and that had come from an IG complaint.
Okay.
Well, this IG complaint was years old. I did not know that.
Okay.
And so
they're just getting around to it, basically.
Just getting around to it.
The sexual assault IG complaint. All right.
Yes, this old IG complaint. And so
Okay.
then I get more pressure on me from even the inspector general at the time, going to this wing commander that was conducting the investigation with me as appointed as the investigating officer. That individual went to the wing commander and said, I need to send a memorandum for record to a 3-star general at the SAF IG explaining why that I need to send back to this inspector general because they're getting questioned why the investigation's taking so long. So I, with all my experience, write a very nice MFR, and they asked me to send it through my wing commander.
Surely.
Big no-no. And to my, my vice commander, and then they will send it on to the wing commander conducting the CDI, who will then send it maybe supposedly to the IG that's getting all the pressure from the 3-star general at SAF IG. And so I'm like, nope, not doing that. And so I wrote an MFR that basically laid out everything, didn't name names, told them how many witnesses I had already interviewed, all those things. And funny as it should be, I send that to the wing commander that had me, as the IO investigating officer for this investigation. And I only sent it to him. And I sent an email to my leadership and said, I sent the MFR in a timely manner to the wing commander, and I will send it no further. And so that was it. And I said,
and for anybody who's not aware, there are at least regulatory and legal very definite restrictions on what can be shared, especially when it comes to people's privacy, names, activities, etc., that can be shared specifically when it comes to, or excuse me, when it deals with military sexual trauma. That includes sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape, as defined by the Veterans Administration. And this investigation dealt with those things. And if I recall, the complainant who had made the complaint, I think it was almost 3 years before the California IG decided to do anything about it. The National Guard IG decided to do anything about it. Your command, the wing, the IG themselves, they're directing you to violate all of these laws, to violate the privacy of not just the complainant themselves, but also all of the people that you have been interviewing and investigating.
Correct. Absolutely. And so at that point, I'd send it off. And then on the weekend, I think it was like 2 days later, I had my own IG complaint in with the California National Guard IG. And on a Saturday, they closed my case. And I was like, okay, surprise, surprise. You're mad at me because I sent this MFR, and I don't even know if the MFR ever made it to the 3-star general. But then I know that it did because I sent it to the 3-star general. When I found out, I think it was I was getting so much pressure that I finally reached out to the SAF IG that they told me in these emails that it was going to. And again, I think they thought I was a big dummy, and they were wrong. And so I sent an email to the SAF IG explaining myself and saying, this is the MFR that I sent to the IG, and I am very uncomfortable with this because I do not think this complaint is being handled correctly. I do not feel that this investigation is going correctly. I am getting no assistance. And every time I ask for help, they just tell me to go back and keep going. And I know it's not right. I mean, there's every bone in my body. I know it's not right. And I said, I'm not doing that. And there was numerous witnesses that came forward.
And when you said they closed the case, I think what you mean by that is that they essentially, so you were the investigating officer. You had been doing this investigation for about a year, I think, at that point, ish. About?
Yes. No, but I had my own case open. That was before I started the investigation.
And because you weren't playing ball, they closed your complaint out on a weekend.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, okay, so what year are you, and just for context, SAF IG, the terminology, that's the Air Force IG, that's the 3-star.
Yes.
who oversees both Office of Special Investigations as well as all
Yes.
of the services, inspectors general. So you
Yes.
send that to him. I'm guessing it's him at the time.
Yes, it was.
And what does he say in response?
Oh my gosh, it actually brought me to tears because I knew I wasn't crazy. He actually took the time and wrote me this long email explaining why he was requesting, and that really that I had been doing the right things. I told him, I said, I'm trying to do this investigation, but the individual, the complainant's a DSG, and they're allowed to be in status.
DSG being what?
Drill status guardsmen. So
Okay.
the weekends in the National Guard. And so I was trying to do everything to protect everyone in the investigation, to include, the alleged, suspect. So I was trying to do all those things, but I was getting hit from every direction. And when this general wrote me back this letter saying, you're doing the right stuff, but I'm going to send you over to the person in charge of complaints. And then when I did go talk to that individual too. They were like, hey, have you ever heard of I can't even remember the number now, of the AFI? And I said, no, what is that? And he said, that's the actual regulatory guidance that now governs CDIs. That CDI guide you've been using has been obsolete since 2021. And I literally fell off the chair.
Now in that exchange, okay, so there's the regulatory aspect, but there's also the issue, I think the more pressing one, is that you're being pressed by your chain of command to continue an investigation that should not be handled via a command-directed investigation or administrative channel at all.
Right.
Did you get any relief from the Air Force IG writ large in that regard?
No.
Okay.
They just told me to get a new JAG.
You're doing good. Keep it up. Rah, team. Okay.
Well,
you go to work and your wing commander, vice wing commander, whoever, keeps calling like, what's the status? What's the status? What's going on?
Right.
Arrive at that foregone conclusion, damn it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Well, again, none of that happened. I came back. Then I decided, okay, now I know the guide that I'm supposed to follow. So I got out the regulations. I read it instantly. And then I went back to the wing commander and said, I need a new JAG. This is the wrong guidance. And so then the wing commander, I was getting ready to schedule the interview with the suspect, which was the last interview in this investigation. And I sent an email and said, here, I talked to the SAF IG, and because they said I could tell them that and I should tell them that, and I did. And then basically the next morning, I got an email back that said, you're fired. I'm removing your authority for this investigation because you haven't been conducting it correctly. And I believe that, again, that was just another nail in my coffin, according to them, because then I'm sure that they put in the IG complaint that I was removed for failure to follow the proper guidance, even though the colonel's JAG gave me the improper guidance and then would not let me get a new JAG and would not let these things be properly addressed. And in the midst of all this, the complainant actually got a special victims counsel in addition to it. And because I'd had 16 years experience as a sexual assault response coordinator, I knew all the things you could and couldn't do and knew them very well. And so then I think at this point, they'd all decided, the IG, the commanders, I don't know who else, all the way up to the top, had all decided, oh my gosh, get this hot potato out of here. She's going to blow the whole thing up, which, I think eventually is going to happen.
Yeah. So you get dismissed out of the investigation, which is kind of a godsend because you can't in good faith execute that investigation.
No.
I'm going to go ahead and assume they found the lackey they needed to carry it out, but it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to this discussion. And where in the timeline of events between 2020 and now was this playing out?
This was 2023.
Okay.
I think it was, yeah. Okay, so I was asked to be the investigating officer one time in October, and then they said, "Oh no, we don't need you to be it." And then they made it in March of 2023.
Okay, so the nails in your coffin, so to speak, began in 20 with, okay, hey, the SSRB is being implemented inappropriately. Then 2023 comes around and you're tasked to do this inappropriate, illegal investigation to investigate a crime.
Yep.
And you're not a law enforcement officer.
Nope.
Seems straightforward to me. And in 2024, you bring up again the issue about the SSRB, and then you are put under the SSRB process yourself, in which you find out the results after a near-death experience.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then I find you guys.
And yeah, and that's a perfect segue. Thank you. You could host as I sit here drooling on myself. So what's your definition of victory in all this, Natalie? What are you striving? And you had been working with one of our OG advisors, Monica Leger, superstar, who's now moved on to greener pastures. Working with us still. What is your victory conditions? What are you looking to achieve at this point?
Well, again, speaking of wonderful, wonderful assistance, again, from the foundation. But what the foundation did for me then is that I already started. I knew I'd filed an IG complaint in November of 2024. And I'm sure, again, I put another nail in my own coffin because I wasn't quiet about it. Everybody knew it was me. And I don't care because I made the protected communications. And so it covered a myriad of things. And it just sat there. So I had my clarification interview, which is required. So anyone that doesn't know, you go for a clarification interview to see if there's enough, to move forward with an actual investigation.
And this is being done by the state IG at this point?
Yes, the state IG at this point.
All right.
And so I went and did that clarification interview in December. And again, in the midst of all this, dealing with my blood clots and all those kinds of things, and still working from home, still working diligently for my staff and the entire wing. And then it comes that after my clarification, nothing, crickets. And I said, okay, well, we're going to play like that. Then I'm going to file another congressional. And so I did. I filed with 2 different Congress people. And then that's when Monica came and to help me. And so that's what we did. And I, at this point, I have nothing to lose. I have done nothing wrong. They don't have anything on me to do anything wrong because I've told everybody. So I've told everybody. I've made every protected communication. I even say the words. I'm a whistleblower. I've made a protected communication. There's no doubt in your mind. I put it in writing, all those kinds of things. And so nothing's happening. And multiple other people that I know filed IG complaints also. And my recommendation is always to file them at the DOD IG because at least they have to be tracked. Because if we do it within our own state, they're going to hide it under the rugs or, and if they don't like you, they'll kill your career with it. So, which we've had a lot of that. And so
let's remember every state IG works for the adjutant general, which is the senior ranking officer of that state.
Bingo again.
Incestuous.
And
yes.
That's across the services, of course, yes. Active duty, yes. National Guard, reserves. But I just wanted to point that out.
Yes. So, but I'd already told all those people too. So I'm like, and it's all in writing. And so again, I decided, well, I'm just going to put it all out there. Maybe something will happen, maybe something won't, but I will figure this out because people need to know that we have some really, really bad leadership and they're doing some really nasty things. And so I did. I put it all out there. Other individuals came forward, but it wasn't until I did the congressional that Monica helped me with that is what finally, all of a sudden, at this point, I'm still on fighting to be on orders and telling the Congress people that this is what they're going to do to me. Well, the Congress people don't understand medical military. So what did the congressman do? He sent it back to say, I'm looking into this IG complaint and these concerns. And Who do they send it to fill it out? But my wing commander and the vice commander.
Sadly,
And
you're not alone there.
no. And so they completely, do not tell the truth, except for I think one item they told the truth on the whole thing back to the congressman. But what that did do, I believe, is that it made them look at the thing to investigate it. And so then they called for another command-directed investigation. So
this is into your complaints, correct?
This is into my complaints, and there was two others, I believe, at the same time. So the investigating officer was assigned. I think the investigating officer did a fabulous job. It started in the beginning of April, and then the investigation was completed, to my knowledge, because the individual PCS'd, the investigating officer did. So it was done by the end of July, 1st of August. And again, I get my every 60-day update, and I do not fault the state IG for this, but the state IG gives me my every 60-day update that it is with command, and they have done nothing. And in the meantime...
No, I was just saying, when you say July-August timeframe that the investigation was completed, that's July-August 2025, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
A few months ago.
So I think going back to Ryan's question, at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, your victory is to receive the medical care that you deserve, because since you were separated from the Guard, you lost your medical benefits. You lost your TRICARE medical benefits. So receive the medical care that you deserve, and then have the opportunity to actually retire from the Guard, because since you were separated, you were not given the opportunity to retire after 31 years of service, which just
Jesus,
completely wacky.
Come on.
Correct.
And then
that's vindictive right there.
Right. Very
wow.
vindictive. And then
but keep in mind, though, retirement is a voluntary action. So if I would have elected to retire rather than let them separate me under the wrong conditions, I would have no recourse.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
They would have to allow me to come back out of retirement.
We're not firing you, but...
Yes. So we're firing you, and they're going to cause me all kinds of military debt. I mean, like $40,000 in debt, which I've paid, but again, I have no job. They cut my orders off on the 10th of January, and which meant I had nothing. Then they put me in for separation on February 2nd, and it took the Air Reserve Personnel Center until April 28th to actually separate me. And so then I have another ticket in with the Air Reserve Personnel Center saying I was separated with medical conditions, and here's my CDI, here's my case, here's my IG case number, here's all these things, go check it out. And still, I have nothing from them either. But to be made whole, it would be, you need to back pay me and resolve all these issues that you've caused for me, to include my medical, which I've had to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket, which was an active duty problem. And they were all well aware of it, and they've let other people stay with medical conditions, but oh no, there was no way they were going to let me stay. So again, I was treated differently. I was the special child, and so I was treated differently, but those that are in the circle, they can get to stay, and they get all the benefits and taken care of. But again, so that I can then retire appropriately. But I'm glad it's not under the leadership that I had, because I think, they were, far less than stellar. So
yeah, and like you alluded to, you're going to make it better. You're paying it forward at the same time, right?
Yep.
One of the things that's unique about your case, although there aren't many unique things, sadly, in terms of the pattern of behavior, and so many of the cases we see, which is you do the right thing, you report a wrongdoing, and you're then targeted, right? And that's essentially, in a very banal nutshell, what happened to you, Natalie. You brought up some wrongdoings over the course of a few years, and they had enough of you, and they're going to get rid of that boat rocker, damn it, and they're going to make it hurt, and you have very little recourse because it all goes to the same chain of command who's carrying out the abuse. Oh, gee willikers. But one of the things, maybe more than one thing that's unique about your case and you, Natalie, and then I'm going to pass it off to Francesca for the last, the send-off here, is first you open the show with, I wouldn't trade it for anything. So all this rigmarole the last 5 years, but fundamental betrayal by the military vis-a-vis you still look at it like those are some awesome times and some incredible opportunities. And that's how we look at it as well. Two things can be true. And that's a lot of people don't understand that. And they misconstrue our message. Like the military is awesome and it's also terrible, right? They coexist.
Yes.
And your story shows that very thing. You know, you're a proud American and proud serving member of the Air Force for a long time. You did it because you believe in it, right?
Yeah.
And still do.
Yeah.
And then the other
And I will tell you this too, at least 35 witnesses came forward to corroborate me.
Sure, yeah. And none of them will be considered or interviewed. Yes. That unfortunately is not unique.
Yeah.
And the unique-ish thing, the second thing at least about your case is that, and we talk to our clients about this, and this is a difficult decision, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I profess that the more risk you are willing to incur in this process, the higher chance of success.
Correct.
And I get why people don't. There's a lot to lose. There's clearances and careers and future careers and all that. I get it. But at the end of the day, the people who come out on top are fortune favors the bold in essence. And that's what you're showing. You're like, I'm not going to take this laying down, and you're not going to outgrind me. You're not going to outweight me like so many people have been in the past. So I admire that's an admirable quality about you and about your case. So proud of you and the work we're doing to root that out. Francesca, for you, the final words, please, madam.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Natalie, for coming on the show. And just as Ryan said, it's the fortune favors the bold or the brave, right? And I just wanted to do one minor admin note before I turn it over to Natalie for her closing comments, which is that for those of you who are not aware of this medical thing that Natalie keeps bringing up and blood clots and, et cetera, why does that actually matter? For those of you, if you're in the military, not in the military, if you're not aware, the military does have a requirement, a legislatively mandated requirement that service members cannot be separated from the military involuntarily or voluntarily if they are medically not ready to be separated. There is a requirement, legal requirement, that if a member is sick and is not ready to be separated or needs care from the military, they cannot be involuntarily separated. So amongst many other issues and laws that were violated, Natalie, that is certainly one that was very definitely violated. I just wanted people to be aware of that, because I remember I dealt with that as a company commander with one of my soldiers. And I was like, what is this nonsense? This is so weird. But it's true. It's true. And it's there to protect service members from commanders who are saying, oh, well, you're sick. Okay, bye. We don't need you anymore. You're hurting my readiness.
Absolutely.
Right. So thank you again, Natalie. And thank you for working with our team. Thank you for all the conversations. And last word for you, ma'am.
No, just keep doing what you're doing. Get those podcasts out there. Like I said, I've watched every single one, and each one of them has definitely struck a nerve with what I've seen over 30, 31, almost 32 years of service. And I just keep doing what you're doing, expanding any way that we can help, because truly you've made a difference. You've made a huge difference in the last year in my life. And just to know that I'm not alone, to know that as these podcasts continue, even to just the information that's getting out there to help other service members, it's even important because of the nature of this stuff. I may seem like I'm lighthearted about things, but it has taken its toll throughout that. And that was one thing that the foundation did also, was to give me, to continue to keep up the hard work, to keep going and not giving up, maybe taking a breath in between. But ultimately the work you're doing is just absolutely important. And like I said, I tell everybody that I can about their circumstances when they come to me for advice, and I say, hey, you need to go to these people. They actually know what they're talking about, and they're compassionate. And like I said, even as lighthearted as we are, we've been through the grind, and we're still standing. So
amen. What a way to send the show off. Thanks, Natalie. Appreciate you hired.
Thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie. Till next week.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next episode.